All right, Snuggie, hold on to your bonnet because I'm about to get on it. This will be a response to the Political Philosophy channel, specifically her book, or the book she reviewed, which I don't even know her name. She's a professor at a university somewhere. The book was called Strangers in Their Own Land, Anger and Mourning on the American Right. So, the book says conservatives of yesterday seem moderate or liberal to us today. False, I would say. The whole everything's more extreme these days, and I'm a nonpartisan central classical liberalist, or classical liberal, right, way of thinking is as naive as it is ineffectual, in my opinion. They're fence sitters. It's like, I'm too hipstery and cool to get in the mud with the rest of you, and I'm definitely nonpartisan. Everyone I've heard claim to be nonpartisan. That's just like saying, they're in a tug of war and I'm over here watching. I'm not part of all that. It's like, yeah, you are. You wouldn't be watching. You'd be over there doing something else. You're part of this too. So to me, it's like ideally we all are nonpartisan and centrist, and classical liberalism, by the way, pertains to rebelling against monarchy. It stopped applying, people, as soon as the turn of the century hit. As soon as our country was established, conservatism became the new liberalism because it flipped, okay? We literally changed governments, people. Let's try to catch up. So, just ask our huge group of liberal Republicans, or Republicans in name only, aka rhinos. They are the Democrats of the Republican Party, all right? And Article 4, Section 4 of the United States of America's Constitution guarantees a Republican form of government, all right? So if anybody's Democrat, got a problem with that, just take it up with our founding fathers. So the book says across the country, red states are poorer and have more teen mothers, more divorce, worse health, more obesity, more trauma-related deaths, more low birth weight babies, lower cost enrollment, or lower school enrollment rather, and on average, people in red states die 5 years earlier than people in blue states, and red states have more industrial pollution. All right. Now, we could look at population and say, yeah, well, the populations here is more spread out, so there's less infrastructure, less education, blah, 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 right? But I'm not going to go that route. I will say that we have more pollution because we have less bureaucratic overreach, which the book calls government regulation. And red states produce far more energy, way far more energy, right? Dramatically more energy than the blue states, right? The blue states are the consumers. As for the rest, I believe that these negative outcomes that are mentioned above are due to the red states being built for, and arguably by, people who had planned for it to be a more conservative and liberated nation. But finding themselves or ourselves in a matriarchal socialist utopia of mixed economics, which I hate, crushing debt. We have $127 trillion in unfunded liabilities, which stagnates growth, moral degradation, hedonism under the leadership of our selective service immune, affirmative action enabled female voting majority. Everybody knows that women are the ones who control the most economic spending, and they must spend. So, advancement is sluggish, right? And of course, that's going to be blamed on probably capitalism and conservatives, right? Even though we're in a mixed economic system, which is half socialism, right? And people say, oh, you're conflating. No, I'm not. I can prove I'm not. Government force is not charity. So, as you once said, political philosophy, to paraphrase, democracy is our best flawed form of government that we have, right? Plato's aristocratic republic is bested, though, in my opinion, by a constitutional republic wherein the aristocracy is appointed not by nepotism, such as affirmative action or inheritance, but by meritocratic competency, right? So the aristocracy is there because they earned it, not because they were born into it. And not usually, like I said, through nepotism, affirmative action, being born rich. After all, not everyone can inherit their fortune. Within such a system, right, a constitutional republic that relies on meritocratic systems, processes. In such a system, everyone becomes their own philosopher king, so one is not needed. All right? That's why some say tyranny is necessary, because people are idiots, more or less. Well, they're not idiots if they earn their place. They can't afford to be. They'll be taken out by someone behind them. So, today the terms republic and democracy are virtually interchangeable, but historically, and we are dealing in historic documents when we refer to the Constitution, those two differed. The key difference between a democracy and a republic lies in the limits placed on government by the law, which has implications for minority rights, the individual being the smallest minority. Both forms of government tend to use a representative system, which means voting. And in a republic, a constitutional charter of rights protects certain inalienable rights that cannot be taken away by the government, even if they've been elected to do so by the majority of voters, right? But in a pure democracy, the majority is not restrained in this way and can impose its will on the minority. This is where people are like, oh, my popular vote. No, democracy is often called mob rule for a reason, because it is. So, as for the book's mention of Atlas Shrugged, because people in the Tea Party, apparently, according to the book, are big on their Atlas Shrugged and their Ayn Rand. Right? You could say libertarians too. But that stuff is far too ineffectual. It's not going to work. People don't want to take responsibility for themselves, all right? They want me to give them stuff. They want you to give them stuff. And if you're one of the people giving, they want you to be quiet while you give them stuff, right? So, with the exception, because I'm not one of those people, I'm technically a dependent. I'm not afraid to say it, but I'm working my butt off to get out of it, right? I hate it. I wish charity would go back to the way it should be, right? Which is you get the guy going, you get him what he needs, and you get him out of there. You don't try to keep him in the system. That's stupid and a waste of money, but whatever. So Ayn Rand was basically an ugly fat chick who basically relied on her father and didn't like communism because they wanted to steal all of daddy's money and there'd be none for her. So, because she's a woman, her materialistic cutthroat atheism is called philosophy, even though it's not. The fundamentals of objectivism are reality as an absolute, a corollary of which is that the supernatural does not exist. Well, I would say that according to methodological naturalism, the supernatural need not exist. Even if God were to exist, for instance, he need not be supernatural, but working under naturalistic laws, right? Because he created them in theory. So, assuming naturalism as a working method, assuming naturalism in working methods as the current paradigm without the further consideration of naturalism as an absolute truth with philosophical entailment is called methodological naturalism. The subject matter here is a philosophy of acquiring knowledge based on an assumed paradigm. The second tenet of objectivism is reason is man's only means of knowledge, a corollary of which is that faith is invalid. According to the Bible, though, faith is dead without works and is inseparable from works. Besides, there's no way to make a decision without some degree of conscious or unconscious reasoning. So, Ayn Rand's philosophy essentially comes down to eschew deities and get money. Right? The author of this book, back to the author, is a Democrat Party, socialist-loving, affirmative action-enabled, selective service immune member of our female voting majority. And she knows nothing but to project her femininity onto others. Feelings are irrelevant. This whole book was about feelings, and they're irrelevant. And yes, there is a blatant campaign. Oh, 1 second. Really? Well, no. Okay. And yes, there is a blatant campaign against white men, okay? And I'm saying white men because it's men pertaining to selective service and white men pertaining to pretty much everything else, right? So it's a blatant campaign of institutional discrimination against Caucasian men and all men to a lesser extent. and it's not in our imaginations, and we are responding accordingly, right? Because the author would make it out like, oh, they're just not realizing their deep story, and we acknowledge how they feel, but really they're just going to have to change with the times. Basically, this was Penis Envy Made Manifest. The book, notice its publishing date, right? 2016. This book was meant to mock white men, all right? Especially southern white men from Louisiana. But one of the little maps that I showed here was the fact that that Bible Belt is mostly for Protestants. If you look elsewhere, Catholics are everywhere, and a lot of them are white, so it's not quite an honest look. But she honed in like that for extra gotcha points, right? But basically, they're there to mock white men after the first female president was elected. All right, and everyone would say, "Why do you vote for Hillary Clinton? Why do you want to vote for Hillary Clinton?" Oh, because she's a woman. What about her economic policy? What about the fact she wants a no-fly zone in Syria that's going to start a war, according to Russia? No, nothing. You didn't even know that? Just because she's a woman. Got to be the first woman on the moon, huh? I mean, on the presidency. You know, hire Barack because he's black, even though he's an inbred Muslim and doesn't care about America, right? You know, you got to be progressive. So the plan was write a book, a scathing, sarcastic book using relational aggression, by the way. I have to find that several over my other videos. Relational aggression to mock men, but it failed miserably, right? So this is true political philosophy. Tell me, my squishy darling, yes, you were a vaguely hot librarian, but did you earn your position, or did the government keep a better qualified man from taking it from you? Just asking. All right, so this has been the Furious Nevermind, and I will kill you with my teacup.